Excellent. So we are now live on Facebook as well. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's town hall. And for those of you who might be joining us on Zoom, feel free to ask your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. Either place works just fine. For those of you joining us on Facebook Live, feel free to comment on the post, and we will add your questions or comments to the discussion here with our panelists. And this evening, I'm excited to introduce you to Carla Bailey-Smith, who is running as a candidate for Illinois 88 State Representative. Carla?
Thank you, Kelsey. Tonight, we're going to talk about voting by mail. And because my district covers areas of Tazewell and McLean County, I have a guest tonight from each county. My first guest is Jacob Brisbin. Jacob is the secretary of the Tazewell County Democrats. So thank you for joining us, Jacob.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be
here. Many of us have already received vote-by-mail applications because the state of Illinois voted to send applications to people who have voted recently. So Jacob, have you received yours?
As a matter of fact, I have, and I did bring it with me so we can see what it looks like.
Okay, great.
Postcard-sized mailing, and it has the sign up on one side of it, and then you actually open it up, unseal it, and then it's pre-addressed to the clerk on the other side, and then you actually tape it shut and then drop it in the mail. You do actually have to put postage on these, though, sadly, so make sure to put a stamp, but you can just drop it in the mail, and that'll get you registered.
Okay, and do you know if it requires a postcard stamp or a first-class stamp?
It just requires a normal, just first-class stamp.
Okay, I'm just wondering because it's postcard sized, but it doesn't actually say, mine didn't say in the box if it was first-class stamp or postcard stamp. So
that's a good question. I do know that these are all signed with official election mail on them, so I don't know if that changes the rate or something of that nature. But to my understanding, it's just a first-class stamp.
Okay. So there's going to be some people who don't receive one of these applications if they've moved recently, and if they haven't been voting, maybe they haven't felt like they've had somebody to vote for. They haven't felt engaged in the process, but maybe they're a little fired up now and they want to be part of the process. So what do people in Tazewell County need to do?
Sure. So there are a couple of different avenues that you can take to still get registered, signed up here for your vote by mail. You can actually stop by in person anytime at the clerk's office while they're open Monday through Friday, and you can stop in their normal hours. You can also go to Tazewell.com. There is actually a section for the clerk's office. Our website's a little confusing in Tazewell. It's a little old and antiquated. So under the clerk section, you will find a small link that says elections. And when you click on that, it'll bring you to the elections links. There are several links. You can actually print out a hard copy of the request, and you can mail that in if you didn't receive it in the postcard form. And there's also a link to do it online. Now, to make it easier for folks here in Tazewell, we have actually provided that link on our website, tazdems.org.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so you can just go to tazdems.org and click on election info. It's one of the options on the menu. And then it's the first thing that you see when you get to the elections page. Sign up for vote by mail by clicking the link below. So you can do that as well, probably a little easier.
Okay, so tazdems.org.
That's correct.
Right?
That's our official website. So TAZ like Tazewell and then dems.org.
Okay, and she might already be doing it, but I'm going to ask Kelsey to drop that in the comments on the Facebook Live. There we go. There it is. Thank you, Kelsey. Great. So now you're running for county board in Tazewell. You want to tell us about that for a quick minute?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I'm running for county board here in District 1, and that is mainly seated here in Pekin. I'm actually at the Tazewell Democrats headquarters right now.
Yeah, nice background.
Yeah, downtown here in Pekin. But my district covers sort of the western portion of Tazewell County, so everywhere from Pekin to Delavan on the western side. So I'm running for District 1 along with Sue Sundell. She's been there for 15 years. We all love Sue very much. and she's running to keep her seat, and she's the dean of our delegation on the board, so we definitely want to keep her. And then I'm trying to retain a seat for Joe Wolf. He actually decided to retire this year, and so I'm trying to retain that seat for the Dems. So hopefully that we'll both be in office here before too long.
Yeah, great. Now, I understand that the county board actually voted down sending ballots to all registered voters. Are you able to speak about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I could definitely speak to that. So, believe it or not, the Democrats were in favor of that move. This was something that the clerk did. Our clerk is a bit notorious for doing things not necessarily the most straightforward way, the most honest way. This year, he was actually censured for activities with misuse of money and the budgetary process being circumvented that we normally take, and that was unfortunate. He came to the board with the idea that he should get $17,000 because that was how much it was going to cost to send ballots to everybody, under the guise, of course, that it was for voter access, when in reality it was just asking for money from the general fund. And he's already cost the taxpayers over $100,000 with pay raises that weren't done the budgetary process. And this year we have a huge budgetary shortfall because of COVID. So with those issues, it just didn't make sense. So although it seems like, oh, wow, we're trying to get access to the voters, I assure you we are definitely following the statute that the Democratic majority in Springfield passed for the statute for this vote by mail. So we're going to stick with them on that.
Well, thank you so much for clarifying that. And I know that you've got another meeting to go to in a bit here, but is there anything that that the Tazewell County Democrats are doing to increase voter engagement?
Sure, absolutely. So we're just gearing up right now. We're about to increase our office hours. Right now we're only open on Wednesday mornings, but we are getting ready to engage more people. We're excited. There's a lot of efforts right now by the Democratic Party of Illinois to get folks started on this. We're going to be doing phone banking, and that's going to be exciting to try to reach people. We have to do things in such a different way. We can't do the retail politics like normal, unfortunately. But we're definitely partnering with that here in the next few weeks, and we're getting geared up. So I'm excited. We're definitely going to start getting folks engaged.
Great. And let's see. So a couple other questions I had written down to ask you. Are there typically some locations available in Tazewell County, like spread around Tazewell County for early voting, or is that just in Pekin?
Sure, great question. So as soon as early voting starts, I believe is September 24th, you can actually go down to the clerk's office at the McKenzie building here in Pekin, and you can actually vote anytime, Monday through Friday. And then when we get into October, they're going to have extended hours for about the last 2 weeks, and also weekend hours. So you're going to be able to go to the clerk's office on the weekends as well. And then when that sort of kicks into gear, there are going to be 4 temporary locations that are spread out throughout Tazewell County. You're going to have one at Morton Township. You're going to have one in Washington Township, buildings in Morton and Washington. And then you're going to have a location at Felipe in East Peoria, where they do the Festival of Lights building.
Yeah.
And then also in Tremont, actually the Tremont Community Center. And they're only going to be open, I believe, let me just double check. It looks like they're going to be open for weekends only, Fridays and weekends, starting at the very end of October. So.
Well, that's good to know. I'm glad there'll be plenty of opportunities if people don't want to vote by mail, or if they find it confusing, or it's just not convenient to get a stamp, or to walk it into the county clerk's office and then wait for it to be mailed. You can still do early voting. That's great. And I do see you added a note here that the last day to register or change your address at City Hall in Tazewell County is October 6th.
So I did not add that note to the
Maybe I did. I pulled all the information I could find, and I put it in here, so we made sure we're telling our audience.
Absolutely. And one note that I would make is that it would be at the clerk's office. So
Okay.
that's an important note. So the Tazewell County
Right. To change your address at City Hall at the clerk's office, and that's in Pekin.
That's correct. Yes.
All right. Great. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share with our audience tonight?
Sure. One thing I did want to add is that you can, it can be kind of scary to drop something in the mail, right? You're worried that, did I actually get signed up for this? Am I going to actually get the ballot mailed to me? You can actually call the clerk's office once you mail it. So you can call or email them, and they would be able to answer that question and just allay your concerns. The election staff at the clerk's office is very good. So they would be more than happy to help out and get the answer for you.
So they can, so the staff at the elections office in Tazewell can verify that they received your application, and can they also verify if they received your ballot?
Yes, so they can verify that you've signed up. I don't know about the ballot question. That's a good question, but I do know for certain that signing up for vote by mail to make sure that you actually did, you can go ahead and give them a call. And honestly, It's super easy to just go online and just type in a couple of things and boom, you're good to go.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your participation tonight, and good luck. And I wish times were different and I could see you in person at campaign events, but we'll just keep doing the best that we can.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Jacob.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. My next guest is Jim Rogal, who is the elections chair of the McLean County Democrats. Thanks for joining us, Jim.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So in McLean County, we have 2 election authorities, which can sometimes cause a little bit of confusion. Jim, could you just briefly explain why we have 2 election authorities and how do they operate a little differently for us?
Traditionally, when they started putting all of the powers into the county clerks for elections, this was 30 plus years ago, all large cities had their own election authority. For the longest time, Springfield, the city had its own election authority, separate from Sangamon County. Danville had its own, separate from Vermilion County. Rockford had its own, separate from Winnebago County. Aurora had it separate because Aurora actually goes into 3 different counties, so they had their own separate election authority. East St. Louis, just until recently, had their own election authority. The city of Chicago has its own election authority versus the county. Some of it was done primarily because of things like Aurora, where it covers more than one county. Others, it was done more of a political move back 30 years or so ago, basically giving those controls to the cities versus the counties. A lot of them, if not most, I think even Peoria has gotten rid of their city election authority and either merged it into the county, or the county merged it into the city one to run those local elections. So it's not unheard of, but less and less counties have them now as they used to.
Right. I didn't realize it was a precedent that there were.
Yeah, there's been tons of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I live in the city of Bloomington, so I got an application from the Bloomington Election Commission. Looked very much like the one that Jacob showed us. I don't have mine to show because I recycled mine, and I went online and I filled my application out online. I didn't make a copy of it. I don't know, Jim, do you recommend that when you do it online that you print out a copy to prove that you filled it out?
A lot of election authorities, I just realized a week or so ago that Bloomington doesn't do this, but most election authorities actually send an email back letting you know, or putting up on the screen a notification and a tracking number for you. Bloomington Election Authority just puts it up there that it was received on the screen, but doesn't actually send you anything. I did it at the county clerk level. I filled it out online almost a month ago, and she
Mhm.
actually sent me this little card, which you can't really see through
Yeah,
my,
yeah.
my
There you go.
hidden screen, but
Yeah.
basically saying that I got it and that I wouldn't need to fill out one if I got it from any other authority, and that September 24th they would be mailing ballots. The purpose why I did it a month ago was to try and save the county a little money. If I already have applied
Oh,
for a
right.
ballot,
Yeah.
shouldn't
So
have
then
to
they
send
weren't going to
another
mail you one.
application.
Oh, yeah.
Our,
Yeah.
our county clerk is defaulting to the exact letter of the law for the first time. So the law says anyone that has voted since the primary of 2018, the 2018 primary forward, that has
Mhm.
voted gets an application, even if you filled one out already. So I
So
got
you
one in the
you
mail.
got one. You got one anyway.
I got one from her anyway.
Okay.
And reached out to her and said, well, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And her response was, well, the law says I had to.
I see.
Doesn't technically say that, but okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I had this question from somebody. I paint houses for a living, and last week the woman whose house I was painting pointed out that she's already had 2 applications sent to her in the mail. So it's a 2-part question. What happens if you kind of, let's say you're forgetful and you actually fill out 2 applications? Are you going to get penalized for that? Is anything bad going to happen?
Nope.
Okay.
No, they'll just disregard the second one.
Right.
Once you're on the list, they won't add you a second time. They don't penalize you. You could fill out one every day from now through September 24th. And other than wasting a lot of postage, I mean, otherwise nothing would happen to you.
Right. And there are organizations that are sending out applications that are, not our election authority, not our county clerks. I got one from an organization called Vote for Fairness, and that one actually had postage included on the envelope. And it's okay to send that form in if you want, right?
Yep. Yeah, there are a number of organizations, a lot of them tied, or a few of them at least tied to the fair tax that are doing that. There's 3 that are 3 committees I know of for the fair tax that are involved in voter outreach. One sent out the applications like that. Another one is just going to be doing phone calls, I believe, to that same kind of universe of people who got those applications. But then there are also a lot of local parties send them out as well.
Okay.
Not a lot of downstate parties, but like some of the ones in the suburbs will send them out in their heavy Democratic areas. Downstate, over in Rock Island and Peoria, in that area through there, there's actually an organization, and I don't have it in front of me, that sent out one from the Republicans, basically saying, fill this out. It was already pre-filled out. All you had to do was sign it and send it back. But they actually had a separate P.O. box that they wanted you to send it to. So it was fill this application out and send it back to us, and then we'll send it to the clerk, your individual clerk. There was a group kind of like this a few years ago that they found the P.O. box was never checked. So they sent them out and then never turned them in.
Right.
And there was like 3,000 applications sitting there that people never got their application all the way through to their clerks.
Yeah. Right.
So the one thing I would say is, if you can fill out any application, there are certain guidelines. It's got to have like your age and your address and things like that have to be on the application, but you can fill them out, but make sure they go back to your election authority where you live.
Right.
Don't send it back to the organization that sent it to you. And most of them don't do it that way. They have you send it directly to the clerk or to the election authority. But I would be leery of anyone that sends you your voter information and says, sign this and return it to us.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And in McLean County, people can also check with the county clerk or Bloomington Election Commission if the ballot the application has been received, correct?
Correct. Now they have reduced hours. As Jacob said,
Oh.
the clerk in Tazewell has regular hours, but the clerk's office and the municipal building there in Bloomington, the county building, sorry, doesn't have, it's not open to the public currently, at least not for regular hours. So if you call or email the clerk's office, you'll have to leave a message unless you're lucky enough to catch somebody. And I will say, while in the past I haven't had quick responses from them, lately I have had fairly quick responses from them.
Okay.
So they seem to be doing as good a job as they can be under the circumstances.
Right. Well, that's good to hear. And then once, so the ballots are actually mailed out on September 24th.
Yep.
And that's the same day that early voting starts. Now, is that just our county or is that statewide?
Statewide.
Statewide. So okay.
On September 24th, every election authority has to at least have early voting in their office.
Okay.
The clerk's office in McLean County does it there in the lobby. And in the past, the Bloomington Election Authority has done it up on, I think they're on the 3rd or 4th floor. My guess is they're going to move it because it's in a really small room.
Right. Right.
So my guess is, I don't know, right now they're in discussion or they've agreed to open up the Coliseum there in downtown Bloomington or the arena there and use that as a universal polling place. So there'll be ballot election people there from both the county and the city of Bloomington.
Okay.
And no matter where you live in either of those, you can go in there and vote. It gives people a little more distance. I haven't heard whether that's going to replace the early voting location there at the county building or not for either of them. And I haven't heard exactly when the arena there will be open for that. I think they just came to the agreement yesterday or today that they're going to use it. So it'll be interesting to see. Bloomington, it makes sense. It's right there in the heart of the town. Easy to get to. There's parking. McLean County, as long as they're not using that as a way to close polling places or divert polling places, I'm fine with it. But I'm a little leery whenever our county clerk looks to open things like that. So,
right.
We actually have, in the primary, we had 3 other universal polling places for early voting. We had Bone Student Center, we had Watterson, and we had Eastland Mall. That was open. And in the fall, I believe, at least for sure, Bone Student Center and the Watterson Tower will be universal polling places. I'm not sure if they're going to do Eastland Mall or if they're going to use the Coliseum or wherever.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that they're thinking of a different place for the Bloomington Election Commission early voting because you got to take an elevator upstairs and then there's always arrows on the hallway and it's very easy to get turned around and the room is very small. Yeah. So that's important. I'm glad they're addressing that.
Yes.
Now I just want to review some dates.
Okay.
So all requests by mail must be received by the election authority on October 29th. And then I did hear from some friends of mine who got the county clerk application, that on the county clerk application it says that that you have until November 2nd to make a request. In person. So theoretically on November 2nd you could take your mail-in ballot application in and
you could take or go in and fill out an application in person. And they would I spent some time talking to a couple attorneys today that deal with election law about this, and the theory is that they would then give you your ballot. If you're not comfortable doing it there in person, you could take it, and as long as you put it in the mail by the close of business and by the end of the day on the very next day on the 3rd, it would count. So
right. I just know that some people who received those a few days ago were a little confused at
Yeah,
the
I know.
idea at the
I
idea.
got calls from a couple of them.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna recommend to our audience that you return it as soon as possible. Get it
Yes.
taken care of so that on September 24th, your actual ballot will be in the mail to you. And then once you get your ballot, you can take care of it. You can. I like voting by mail. So when I'm at home, if I have any questions about any candidates, because it never ceases to amaze me that there's always something on the ballot. There's always some position that I wasn't aware was going to be on the ballot. I think I'm going to know everything this time because I'm working really hard to be educated and informed. But everybody has that moment in the voting booth where you go, "What's this? I don't know what this is. I've never heard of this person." So that's my pitch for voting by mail, because you
Yeah, and
can look
some
up
of those
anything.
they even get stranger in some of the off-year elections, because then you have, depending on where you live, you might have road commissioner, and you might have, you know, up in the suburbs, you have all the way down to mosquito abatement district. You have water reclamation. You have,
Mosquito abatement, and you vote
yep.
for them? Okay.
You used to, when we had the big deal 15, 20 years, not 20, 15 years or so ago, with the mosquito population causing, oh, what's it called?
Malaria.
No, it
Or
was
Zika. Was it
yeah,
Zika?
that and some
Yeah.
of that. Yeah, there was a couple
Mhm.
different things that happened, and it was pretty widespread throughout the state. And so they had mosquito abatement areas up in like the West Nile. That's right. Thank you, Kelsey.
Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah.
It was big up along the Illinois River. So there were a number of cases in LaSalle County
Gotcha.
and places and things like that.
Yeah.
So municipalities were spending a lot of money abating and getting rid of mosquitoes if possible. So
Okay. Yes.
why not have another layer of government?
Right. But my point is ballot surprises. If you
Yes.
if you do the mail-in ballot, then any of those weird surprises, you can look it up. Or you can call up your friend, or you can call up Jim Rogal at McLean County Democrats and say, "Jim, who is this person? I've never heard of this person.
Yep.
What is this?"
I get those calls from all over the state still.
All right. I'm going to ask Kelsey to go ahead and drop the registration link into our Facebook feed, and remind people that if you have moved, or if you're a new voter, if you're 18 or 19 years old and this is your first election, you can register online. And that's a very, very easy way to do it. And of course, a COVID safe way to register online. I do want to point out that one reason that ballots get spoiled or rejected is because of the signature. And with all of the vote by mail, that certainly concerns me, because I'm running for office and I don't want to lose votes if people's ballots get spoiled because of the signature. And I will say for myself that I got married in 2010 and hyphenated my last name for the first time. And then after I had been writing that signature for a couple of years, it changed. And there was, I think it was when I voted in 2012, there was this concern about my signature, that it didn't match. And so after that election, I went into the county clerk's office and I changed my signature card. So if for any reason your signature has changed, because sometimes you start out writing your name quite legibly, and then as you get older and you develop kind of an artistic scrawl, well, an artistic scrawl is completely valid, but the artistic scrawl on your voter registration card needs to match the artistic scrawl when you go in and vote in person, or the scrawl that you put on your mail-in ballot. And that is something that you will have to go into the county clerk's office for, right, Jim? I don't believe that's something that you can do by mail to change your registration card.
Correct. There has been some changes, however, with the new law in regards to some of that.
Okay.
So the new law that went into effect that required clerks and election authorities to send out applications to anybody who's voted since the primary of 2018. One of the other provisions within that law extends the oversight of mail-in ballots.
Okay.
So what that means is, in the past, there was one election judge designated to process all of those mail-in ballots. And so what that person would do was, they get the ballot and they get the envelope, and the envelope has your signature on it. And they would look at that and they would look at your signature. And if they didn't think it was right, they would set it off to the side. And on a lot of counties, that would be the end of it. Your ballot wouldn't count.
Mm-hmm.
What they've done now is they now require each election authority to have 3 separate judges representing both parties, 1 Democrat and 2 Republicans, or 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, or however they want to do it. All 3 of those judges, if it's challenged based solely on the signature, all 3 of those judges have to agree that it's not the right signature.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just one judge sitting there going, oh, I know that person, I know they voted for a Democrat. And those things don't happen, and I'm not saying they do, but if they looked at it and said, this scrawl isn't Carla's signature, or this scrawl isn't Jim's signature, they would set it aside and you wouldn't be counted. Now there's that layer. In addition to those 3 people having to sign off, if those 3 people do all say, that's not the right signature, instead of it just being set aside and not counted, it's now put into a stack of people that are then within 48 hours post-election have to be notified by the election authority that there was something wrong with their ballot. Once they are notified, they then have 10 days to go to the clerk or to the election authority and prove that that's their signature, or to go in and verify that that's their signature.
Okay. So they won't actually notify you until after the election?
They don't process them.
Oh, right.
It's 48 hours after the election. So some of them can be begun to be processed prior to the day of, usually. And all that means is that those 3 judges will look, and if they agree that all the information on the envelope is correct, they will open it and set it off to the side. Ballots won't be counted until the close, but what they can do is start processing those, because we're going to have such a large flux of new vote-by-mail people.
Right.
They're predicting close to 2 million people will vote by mail in Illinois. And that's going to be a big drain on resources that night. So if you had to wait until the polls close at 7 p.m. to then start processing those, in some of these counties, it would take all night and into the morning just to open up those envelopes and put the ballots with the ballots and the envelopes to the side.
Right.
So this will give us a little bit of leeway to get started on some of that.
Yeah. So they can't start checking the signatures until the day of the election?
I'm not exactly sure how early they can, but it's set in law of how early they can start processing them. I believe it's that day. If not that day, it's the day before. They don't give it much window to do that, because they don't want any chances for election fraud or anything like that. And Illinois, they talk about it all the time. They like to bash the Postal Service, the largest employer of veterans in this country, a union organization, and say they can't process the mail. But in Illinois, there's only been 16 counts of election fraud in the last 16 or 18 years.
Right.
We're going to cast over 3.5 million ballots on November 3rd in Illinois. That's one election.
Yeah.
So you're talking 16 people out of billions of ballots that have been cast in the last 16 years in the state of Illinois. It's not something that happens very often. So
right.
Trying to scare people or use that as a way to try and get people not to vote by mail is kind of disgusting on their part, in my opinion.
Right on. Okay, I'm going to ask Kelsey if there's any questions or comments that we should address that may have come up on the Facebook Live.
Thanks, Carla. There aren't any questions or comments. I can tell you for sure this conversation was very helpful for me personally. I had that same question about, did I already turn in? I thought I did the application online, and then I got the form from the clerk. And, oh no, did I not? Did I just apply for an application? So helpful. Thank you for that.
Hi, Ben.
Sorry.
Hi, Ben.
So yes, nothing additional at this time.
Okay, thanks. All right. So the last thing I want to do a pitch for is our own McLean County Democrats website. I looked right before we went online tonight, and we have a pretty fabulous page too, with all the links that you need to help you vote in McLean County. So if you live in Tazewell County Democrats have the links there and the assistance for you, and McLean County Democrats have the information that you need. And go ahead.
Even here in Bloomington or at the McLean County Clerk's office, if you're new to Bloomington and you don't know you have your own authority, if you go on their website and start looking on how to register or apply for an absentee, they tell you where to go and they give you that link. And both the BEC gives it to the clerk's office and the clerk office gives it to the BEC. So it might take you a couple extra minutes if you go to the wrong one, but the links and the information's all there. So
right.
Don't be discouraged.
Great to hear. And I think as a Democrat myself, I think it's pretty exciting. I think we have 12 Democrats on the ballot in McLean County this time, and I don't know if that's a record, but it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
It is a record.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jim, for joining us tonight and helping us work through these very common questions. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Not a problem at all.
All right. Good night, everybody.